Hello, everyone. Welcome to The Distracted Gardener. This is Charlie, the Distracted Gardener. This is our first ever um, live version of the show. I imagine there's going to be a couple of hiccups along the way here as we sort of figure out how to do this because um, I have not done live streaming since I was a baby YouTuber, yeah, baby J vlogger a number of years ago. So I imagine it'll take some getting used to. At any rate, I guess I want to start out by issuing some apologies, which is not always the best way to get started. But the first thing I want to apologize about is how many times I have gone through and actually rescheduled the podcast. This is the third reschedule. So the first week, by surprise, my wife set me off to go camping for the weekend. So I went off and went camping in my car, which I talked about, I'm sure. And then what else did we do? And then the following week, there was some family drama. Nothing like, nobody was screaming at anybody or something like that. And then today, as maybe you can tell by my voice, I'm sort of in a rough state. And forgive me here as I look down at my phone. I'm trying to sign in via OBS so that I can see the comments through OBS, which maybe I don't really need to do. But at any rate, because of my condition today, which is it's basically just a cold, but I didn't sleep much last night, and I don't imagine that I will be conscious this evening at 9 p.m. Japanese time, which is when the stream was originally scheduled for. So apologies for, first of all, the reschedules, but also for those of you who had planned to catch the live stream at its originally scheduled time. I will hopefully be doing more of these. I like doing live shows. I've always liked doing them. Again, it'll take some getting used to, but there will be more. So I hope in the future you will be able to catch one, if not all. So I suppose we'll start out just like we always do. But that being said, let's actually bother to share the stream over on Twitter. Wow, it's amazing how much I don't remember how to do this at all. Yeah, so we'll just start off the same as we always do in the normal episodes of the show, which is by talking about what's going on over here in the Hopeful Garden and also the garden at the school. As for the garden itself, as for what's growing in it or things of that nature, there's nothing really new that I haven't talked about already. You know what? That's a complete lie. And excuse me, I'm going to be sipping on some herbal tea infused with honey, so that my voice hopefully lasts through this. But yeah, I completely neglected or forgot that I'm building an herb garden into both the Hopeful Garden here and then also at the school garden as well. The reason for that is basically I've been getting interested in herbalism recently, and I'm not anti-medicine or excuse me, modern healthcare and stuff like that, but I do like the idea of, excuse me, avoiding medicine as much as possible. If I can fix something with an infusion of something herbal, or if I can chew on some leaves and feel better, then that's something I want to do. It also helps that a lot of herbs flower really nicely, and so they're good for pollinators, so that's also a good thing. But yes, I've been really into that recently. And so what do we have in the herbal sections of the garden now? We already had parsley and lemon balm, and we had mojito mint, which I'm not such a big fan of. But the things that we've added are more parsley, and that's spurred on by something I'll talk about here in a second, but also lavender and hakka, which is a Japanese mint, which is super mentholated mint. And it's actually something that I've been I've been chewing on throughout today because my throat hurts a little bit. But it's amazing how if you chew on a leaf of hakka, your throat is like magically better within seconds, or at the very least, it's still in terrible shape, but you just don't feel it, you know. So I think those are all the things. Oh, and then there's also mugwort, which is a native Japanese. It's a native version of mugwort called yomogi, which will be making an appearance in each of the gardens again here at the school. Excuse me, at the Hopeful Garden, which is just behind me through. If you're ready to go through this very bright window, which I guess is over here, and then also at the school garden. And I'm sure I'm forgetting something, but that's sort of the big change as far as actual, you know, gardening stuff goes. Related to that, and something I just sort of talked about a little bit, is the increase in parsley, and that is 100% spurred on by sort of a happening, as they say, which occurred when I went out to the garden on Tuesday before work to do the normal morning check-in on the garden, you know. And I looked at the parsley, which if I go out onto the Hopeful Garden through a sliding door, there's like a support structure for the outdoor part of the air conditioning system, and attached to that is a hanging planter, or two or three actually, and one of those is parsley. And wouldn't you know it, there were like 15 Japanese common swallowtail caterpillars just all over the thing. And I was like, oh man, this is amazing. And my first response is, wow, this is amazing. My second response was, oh god, there's no way that this single parsley plant is going to be able to support all these caterpillars. And if you've been listening to the show for a while, you know that I've been trying to find ways to inspire not just my kids, but my students, who I refer to as my kids, to take an interest, not only an interest, but an active role in the natural world around them. And so I thought, okay, well, I can take a couple of these caterpillars, and we'll set up a planter inside the school with some freshly planted out parsley seedlings, plants, and yeah, that's what we've been doing. So the kids have been checking it out. It's really amazing to see, which I've been sharing over on Instagram, by the way, the changes, excuse my mouth, the changes that have been happening, both in size and color, since it's now Sunday. So it's been only 5 days, but just the change is so amazing. And you know, the kids have one or two of the kids out of the 80 or so plus kids that we have at the school, one or two of them was like, oh my god, it's so cool when they look at it. But then most of them are like, you know, they're kind of like, oh god, I like butterflies, but why do we have to look at the caterpillar, kind of thing. So, which is something, you know, hopefully through this process we break them of a little bit. But anyway, so that's why I'm increasing parsley so much, is because this Japanese common swallowtail only eats relatives of parsley. So things like parsley, carrot, siri, which is a Japanese, it's a wild plant, you know, that's often eaten as what's called a sansai, a mountain vegetable. And yeah, so that's what we're doing, in hopes that this will be a continuing thing that we can do every year and help to support that population. So yeah, that's what's going on here in the different gardens. Before we hop into the main topic today, I'm going to actually take the time to finally share that we are live over on Twitter, and then we'll hop into it, I think. Live now. The Distracted Gardener. That seems a weird order. The Distracted Gardener. The Distracted Gardener, is live. Share the link. What is this? All right, put out some good content here, people. All right, and then I'm part of the Gaijin Podcast Collective on Twitter, which is, FYI, a group of foreigners living in Japan who have podcasts. I'm sort of an outcast a little bit because most of the podcasters actually talk about life in Japan, which is something I have not really done, and I don't have any personal interest in doing since leaving the aforementioned YouTube career. But anyway, it's been cool to be part of that and get some more technical knowledge and from people about podcasting and things like that. So if you're interested, you can follow that hashtag Gaijin Podcast Collective and find your way to some other Japan-based podcasts. So now that we've shared, and I'm sorry, I'm having a feeling like this tea might be doing more bad for my throat than good, but we're gonna stick it out. We're gonna stick it out, and I have for the first time in my life a slightly manly voice. Anyway, so to open up the topic for today, which, as the title of the episode tells you, is From Debate to Dialogue, Talking Climate with Those Who Matter Most, right? We're going to be talking about how you can talk to people in your personal spheres, right? Friends and family, about climate issues. But I want to dive into that by talking about something that I think really drives home why it is important for everyone to be talking about this problem. So on, I think it was October 1st, the World Wildlife Fund's Living Planet Report, the 2024 version, was released. And I'm not going to go through it line by line, but the big takeaway from this, and I'll read this directly from the website. Nature is disappearing. The average size of wildlife populations has fallen by a staggering 73%. It's important to point out that this wildlife refers to the population sizes of 5,000 vertebrate species, ranging again from this is a 50-year study carried out between 1970 and 2020, and that 73% figure is an average across the places, of course, that it was being monitored. But there are some places, I want to say like Latin America or that region, that saw a 96% reduction in wildlife populations, which is staggering. You know, we've talked about on occasion here about the issue that insects are having, and to a lesser extent we've talked about declines in birds and stuff like that. But this points to a much well, I mean, in a sense, it's not new. If there's a problem with insects, there's a good chance that there's going to be a lot of other things that are being impacted, and so this bears that out, And anyway, I talked a little bit over on Instagram, if you're interested, about some of the things you can do both on a individual and systemic level to help alleviate the issue. It's something we're all going to need to join in on, but, I think that just points to the fact that now more than ever, we need to be really loud about the problem. But, how we talk about this problem, and any problem in general, I suppose, but, given the size of the climate crisis, particularly, I think this is important. Really, really how we talk about it dictates our success. And this is the point that was driven home to me. And this is where I had the idea for the topic of the podcast today. This is driven home when at the beginning of September, at the beginning of September, I posted the following on Twitter. My family uses paper towels and tissue at an insane clip. Proposals to switch to washable cloth versions were denied, but I'm hoping accidentally, quote unquote, switching out our normal paper for bamboo paper towels will at least get us started in a better direction. Now, this was the point of my tweeting this was not to, of course, I don't want to shame my family, and it wasn't to bully anybody or anything like that, but my intention was to provide people who are in a similar situation with an alternative, and to make it personal by showing that it was something I was experiencing in my own family. And my wife reacted to it by saying, when you post stuff like that, it makes it seem like we're these terrible people who are out to destroy the environment, and it just makes me feel bad, and of course I do not want to do that to anybody, let alone my wonderful wife, who does not deserve to be made to feel bad about this, I suppose. But what became clear to me, and through this interaction, and then also through something that I had heard on the Joe Gardner podcast about how you communicate is really, really important. It really got my mind thinking about how I can be better at this, because of course, I mean, ultimately the goal of this whole podcast is to be a communicator on this issue, and to talk about this, and to have it be heard, and to have it have some kind of positive impact. So the point of today is that I do not imagine that this is just a me thing. I think there's probably a lot of people who find themselves trying to talk about this to people they love, and just wanting to help this situation, but finding themselves arguing with their friends or family, or not having their words heard. And so I thought, let's see if we can't remedy that a little bit. I do want to point out that when I say that we're going to talk about how to talk about this issue with people, we're not going to go through and talk about, for example, why carbon taxes are BS, or the problem with waiting around for technology to catch up to fix the issue. But rather, what we're going to actually talk about is the actual approach in talking, which is to say, I don't know, tone, or the words you use, or something like that. So that's the main thing we're going to be talking about today. Now, if you do want, I have to realize when I'm touching the screen that it's going to actually affect things, because I often fiddle with it when I'm recording. So apologies for the shift. But yes, as I was saying, if you do want kind of a point by point, issue by issue guide on how to chat, it's worth looking at How to Talk About Climate Impact from the European Climate Pact, which along with everything else will be in link to this will be in the show notes, whether you are watching this on YouTube or you are listening to this on Apple Podcasts or on Spotify or whatever. So anyway, let's talk about the approach. Now, I think what's important to remember is, despite how people act, apparently 7 in 10 Americans, 9 in 10 Europeans, and 9 in 10 Japanese believe in climate change and think it's a major issue. And I know that, a lot of times we feel that we're the only ones who care, people who are actively in this space and actively trying to talk about it. But I think it's important to remember that there's often distance between belief and action, and I think for many reasons that is made clear by what is happening with this climate crisis. So let's start talking about some of the ways that you can talk to people and hopefully transition, or rather shorten that distance between their belief and action. Well, the first thing I want to talk about is trying to speak to a person's wallet when talking about these issues. It's a little bit cynical place to start, I think, but the fact of the matter is that not everyone has the same resources. And the fact is that it can often cost more money to act environmentally responsibly. Anecdotally, I use shampoo and face wash that is plant-based, it's microbead free, and rated ocean safe. Bottles of each of these things, they'll last about 2 months, maybe 2.5 months, but each of them cost 2,000 yen, what feels like $20 for me, but is actually $14 if you were to change it into US dollars. For the same price tag, I could get a 3 to 4 month supply of so-called traditionally made shampoo and face wash that weren't manufactured with the same things in mind, right? So obviously, that's a choice that I make. And it's a choice that I'm in a situation financially that I can make, but not everyone has that same ability, or they are not so, their priorities are elsewhere, So I really think, though, that your best chance to convince someone to switch some of their habits is to show how doing so can save them time or money. And again, that's habits like switching shampoo to things that are ecologically friendly, or whatever the case may be, right? Choosing to reduce how much meat they're eating, whatever the case may be. Native plants, for example, are having a moment right now. But depending on who you ask, I bet the reasons given for their popularity differ. Sure, some people will say that they want to help with the environment and local wildlife. Others, well, maybe they like that native plants are easy to take care of and less water intensive. In other words, they save time and they save expensive resources. Things can be even more costly. The wording there was strange. Things can even be more costly, by which I mean that it's okay if the alternative that you're presenting is not necessarily cheaper either, right? It doesn't have to be the case that it's going to save people, 10 hours a week, or it's going to save them $50 a month or something like that. I think as long as the benefits outweigh that bump in cost, to an extent, I think you can easily convince people to make a switch. Those bamboo paper towels that I mentioned a little while ago. For a 2-pack, they cost 15% more than normal paper towels, which is something like 20 yen or 13 cents more. However, it's not a crippling cost, and when my family understood they'd be helping to save water and protect slow-growing forests in favor of using, bamboo, which is readily replenishable, they made the change without too much of a hubbub, as they say. So, people are really concerned about money, especially if they have families. They got to feed their kids. They got to, everybody's got to pay their bills. And so money is a thing, but especially if it's only a small bump, and there's a lot of advantage to it, then, I think it's something you can get away with. The next thing to point out is and this is I suppose moving on to our second topic, which is to say, not everyone cares about the same things, right? I don't care about the great majority of sports, right? Professional sports. I like hockey. I used to be much more so into a lot of different things, but I don't really care about sports, but other people love sports, right? Some people love going hiking. Some love diving in the coral reefs. Some love butterflies. Some love whatever, Yeah, I think you see the point that I'm trying to make here. And I think, for example, I think it'll be really difficult for you. You'll be fighting a little bit of a losing battle if, for example, you live in, I don't know, small city urban Japan, and you're trying to make a case about how we need to save the monarch butterflies, right? Because they don't exist in Japan. And what I'm getting at, and I think I'm suffering from increasing brain fog here, but what I'm getting at is that you need to come to these conversations from places that are actually going to make people care about it, or things, better yet, things that people already care about. And so we talked about how some people love diving in coral reefs. Actually, here in Fukui, there are a number of places where you can dive. We don't have corals, I think, but we do have a number of places where you can go out and dive, and you can see a very wide variety of fish. And so if you're talking to people who are really into that, you could explain to them, like, I know that you really love diving and going to check out all the wildlife that's around here. Have you noticed that it's the number of fish that you see now isn't anything like you used to see before? And doesn't that suck? And what do you think we can do about it? Why do you think that's happening? And maybe they'll tell you why it's happening. Maybe they know why it's happening. Maybe they're already concerned. But if they're not, you can say, well, actually, there's a thing that's happening where the water's getting hotter, fish are having a hard time surviving, corals are having a hard time surviving, and the point is that you're speaking to them in a place where their heart already is, so you take out a lot of the work for yourself. And I think not only understanding them in this way, showing that you understand them in this way, but also giving them a chance to understand where you're coming from and why you care so much, is also really important. I mentioned that study from, I mentioned the World Wildlife Fund's Living Planet report, sort of at the top of the main section here. And I was talking about it with my wife the other day, and I think she was like, "Oh, that sucks." And because I mean, nobody's gonna be like, "Oh, yay!" 3/4 of the world's wildlife is gone. Nobody's gonna be like that. But also, a lot of people are like, "Oh man, that sucks." But many people are not gonna be like, "Oh well, we can do something about it." Um, you know, but I was really distraught about it. I told her, and I was, and then the more I thought about it, it was getting in my head, and I was crying about it a little bit. And then she understood, and she's like, "Okay, so, all right, are there some changes that we can make around here that you think will help the problem?" And then I put forward some ideas, and she says things that she's okay with changing, and so we have this kind of thing where we make progress, but it's only because in this situation, of course, it's my wife, but if it's your friend or it's your family member, this progress was made because you were understanding where they're coming from and what they care about, and showing them, why it matters to you. And I think, most people want to make their friends happy. They want to accommodate their friends. They want to, they want to make their spouse or their partner happy. And, I think it's a very, very powerful tool that we can use. Now, I think what I want to talk about next touches a little bit on something that I had just said in the last section, but I think one thing that we're really, really bad at as people is thinking about the future, right? Like, I can tell you that if we continue the way we are, and the planet continues to heat in the way that it does, that in X number of years, we're going to have massive crop failure, and people are going to be scrambling to feed themselves, and that's going to have big ramifications for societal stability, right? I can tell you that. And maybe you can think, "Oh, you know what, that's a possibility," but are you going to do anything about it? Right. Some people are going to do something about it, right? They're going to be like, "Oh man, okay, well, that sounds apocalyptic. That sounds terrible. Like, okay, let's start thinking about what we can do about it right now." But, if most people were like that, if it weren't the case that people are so bad at thinking about the future, it seems unlikely that we'd be in our current situation, right? And so what I want to stress, I think, is that the now outweighs the future, right? Again, you can talk about what is likely to happen in a decade or a couple decades or even less than that. But I think it's much more powerful to talk about things that are already happening, right? So we've just had 2 humongous hurricanes slammed into the United States. NASA reported the hottest day ever globally, right? That's the average temperatures taken across the world, was July 22nd, 2024, right? So talking about the unseen future leaves the mind room to say, well, the worst might not happen. Things might change, even if I don't do anything. And, being like, okay, well, that maybe that's true, but look what's happening right now. Look the people who lost their lives in these hurricanes, right? Look how hot things are. It's October 13th and it's 78 degrees outside in Western Japan, right? It's central Western Japan, I guess. But so pointing out things that are concrete that cannot be run from. Oh, Ninjaru. Charlie no Seikatsu. Yeah. Charlie no Seikatsu, by the way, was my old J-vlogging handle when I was part of that community in the YouTube days, before that changed over to One Cup of Japan. Thank you for tuning in. It's been a long time since I've seen you, Ninja. I hope you're doing well. But yeah, all that to say that giving concrete examples, things are happening now, right, shows that there is change that's taking place, that there are bad things that are happening, and that there needs to be something done about it, I think. Now, we're sort of nearing the end here. We're getting ready to wrap up a bit. But getting ready to wrap up a bit, what does that mean exactly? We're going to wrap up completely, okay? But the last thing I want to talk about, and excuse me for just a moment, I'm getting this sniffle, so I'm gonna put this on like a pause mode here, and I'm gonna take care of that, and then we'll be right back. Apologies. All right, and we're back. I apologize for that. Again, it's an unfortunate time to catch a cold, but here we are. So, yeah, the last point to talk about is to remember your place. And I apologize if that's terrible wording, but it was the best I could do. Should have asked ChatGPT, you know. But I believe it's all of our duty to help make the changes we so desperately need. And I think one of the ways to get that done is, of course, by talking to people about this, right? Which is the whole point of the podcast today. If you're giving a presentation at a seminar, or you find yourself in some other situations where you're sort of like expected to be super authoritative and you're expected to be the focus and everything like that, it's okay to talk in a certain way, right? More likely than not, though, in those situations, you're going to be preaching to the choir. Those are people, maybe they paid to see you, or like in the case of a podcast, right? People are choosing to listen. But when you're talking to your friends and family, you should keep in mind that you aren't a speaker they've paid to see, right? You're not there to perform. You're not some authority figure who has to be respected. And, you know, bludgeoning people with facts, not allowing anyone other than yourself to speak, it's just not going to get you anywhere, right? You need to understand how people feel about many different things, why they don't want to change a habit, why they don't believe something, etc. If you want to encourage them and successfully encourage them to make some kind of change, right? And this goes a little bit back to, I suppose, point number 2, understanding what people care about. But I think even if you understand what they care about, it's not guaranteed that you're going to let them really talk about it and really flesh it out and really let them talk themselves to a place where they're going to be actually making some changes. Right. So I think that's what I would say, is that I know, especially like, for example, my father, love you, Dad. Love you, Dad. No, don't think you're listening to this, but, you know, love you very much. But there have been times with my father where, you know, I don't know now. I think we've generally avoided talking about it in recent days, but he used to be very much on the side of like, well, it's not anything that we're doing that's causing climate change and stuff like that. It's just a natural cycle of the planet, right? And there were times where I was so baffled and struck by it, and it always made me feel like some combination of angry or sad or you know, anyway, lots of negative emotions, and at times that would mean that we would end up arguing with each other, you know, like, I can't believe it, you're so backward, and you'd be like, oh, you little what do you think, you went to college, so you're so smart, like that kind of thing, right? And I just remember those days and wishing that I had the knowledge, or I suppose the wisdom that age brings on this issue, as well as many other issues, I suppose. But it doesn't have to be that way, right? Which is I suppose what I'll say in closing is that it doesn't have to be the case that talking about that is terribly awkward, or it's something that's going to start a fight, or it doesn't have to be you you know, talking down on people from a soapbox or something like that, right? There are ways that I hope I have successfully explained to you throughout this episode to do it. Now, I want to point out that a lot of what I'm talking about today is fleshed out in Let's Talk Climate from the Nature Conservancy. You can download the guide for free from the Nature Conservancy's website, which will also be in the show notes. Obviously, I have no connection whatsoever to the Nature Conservancy other than it helps me to better understand what I can be doing to be a better communicator on the issue, both with my friends and family and also those of you who take the time to listen to this podcast. So that is where we will finish up for today. Thank you for tuning in for the first live episode of The Distracted Gardener. I hope to be doing this at a more suitable time, both for people in Japan, people in the States, and I think there's people in 15 different countries that listen to this, which is really fantastic. But hopefully there'll be more of you who can join in real time. I'm sorry again for the multiple delays and reschedules. Hopefully in the future things will be more, excuse me, and I hate that I'm doing so much stifling, but things will be more stable. So anyway, we will be back next week with a normal episode at the normal time. This episode will of course be up on Tuesday morning Japanese time, which will be like Monday. I don't even want to think about it right now. Anyway, it'll be up at the same time as all the other episodes are, and then the next week episode will be up at normal time as well. And next week we're going to be talking about climate anxiety rewired, empowerment over fear, which is when we're going to be talking about what you can do with all the fear and possibly anger, sadness, whatever other emotions you have around climate crisis. What are some of the positive things you can do about that? So I hope you will tune in for that next week as well. If you would like to find out more from me, some of the activities that I'm doing in my garden or otherwise, you can check me out on Instagram and on Twitter. Both of those are at Natural Fukui. Of course, if you're already here on the YouTube page, which is the Natural Fukui YouTube page, YouTube channel, I suppose, then I guess you don't need to subscribe, but we're hopefully going to be doing a bit more about this in the very near future. So whether you're listening or you're watching on YouTube, and if you haven't subscribed in either situation, please go ahead and do so. And that's where we'll leave it for today. Thank you so much, and catch you next week.